just after Holi, that's when you get the second clause in Isaiah 53:3, ukmaseter panim mimenu. Okay, and in English, my English translation, I translate that hiding our face from the hiding place. At the word hiding, that's when Josiah begins to rule. He's only 8 years old. Alright, you get to the end of the second clause, which is the end of the verse in Isaiah 53:3. That's when, that's 621 BC, roughly, give or take 6 months, again, because I have to fine-tune it. But it's definitely at the end of the year on the calendar, because Passover is at the beginning of the new year. So Isaiah 53:4, look how appropriate. So true, all our griefs he carried them. Achen, choleyenu hu nasa. That's the Hebrew. And that's what they're saying at Passover. That's what it's about. See how appropriate how Isaiah is timing the content to the time. That's when the first Passover since Samuel was properly celebrated. Okay, that's the testimony about Josiah's 18th year. I did the videos on Josiah, so you know what I'm talking about. Alright, but get this. That's 621 at the beginning, when it's just when you're starting that verse, Isaiah 53:4, but the end of the clause, okay, lakin choleyenu hu nasa, when you finish the word nasa, carried, guess what happens? Assyria is carried away by Nebuchadnezzar's dad. That's 612 BC. 621 minus 612 is 9. Isn't that interesting? Okay, because if Nebuchadnezzar didn't take over Assyria, there wouldn't have been a temple being raised. There wouldn't have been a Daniel. You see where this is leading? And there wouldn't have been, you know, the promise of time to Messiah. Okay? God knows what he's doing. Alright, so that's just at the end of the first clause of Isaiah 53:4. Alright, now get this. Now, Josiah then, after he has this Passover, he's a really good guy, he gets kind of pissy. And he goes after Pharaoh Necho, and Pharaoh Necho finally has to kill him. That's about 609. I'm not so sure that's 609. It seems like it's a little bit later, BC. But the scholars will tell you that Josiah ruled till 609 BC. Okay, so the second clause in Isaiah 53:4 is umakovenu savalam. Alright, umakovenu, that's 612. The u is 612 at the beginning of the clause. All our heartbreaks. Umakovenu. He bore them. Savalam. Okay, so 612 begins the clause, and it ends with what? 604 BC. Now, a lot of people tell you that the Battle of Carchemish, which is what made Nebuchadnezzar discover Jerusalem in the first place, because he was on his way to finish off Egypt after that. It was what made him discover Jerusalem and want to take it over. Okay, but really, the Battle of Carchemish would have had to have occurred, according to this, and according to God's other timeline, which I'll explain, closer to 607 BC in our terms. But our calendar is 3 months off, so using the Jewish calendar, it would have been, you know, I'm coming up with a 607 BC number for Carchemish, because the Jewish calendar is ending in Adar. You see where that would make sense? It would be considered the prior year, even though it's 3 months into our year. Alright? So the third year from that, I mean, that year was the deportation, the first deportation in which Daniel was taken. And the third year from that is Daniel 1. Benchmark to Daniel 1, when Daniel 1, actually it's Daniel 1 and 2, because those are, you know, Nebuchadnezzar just become king too. Alright, he became king just after the Battle of Carchemish, because his dad died. You know, it's basically, he's on his way to Carchemish. I think this is how it goes. He sees Jerusalem. No, he has the fight with Pharaoh Necho, Battle of Carchemish. He's on his way then to Egypt to, you know, to wipe it out, to finish it off. Alright, he sees Jerusalem en route, stops there, takes hostages. Daniel is part of that. And then his dad dies, and he has to hightail it back to Jerusalem. Okay, and that's where Daniel is Alright, and that's Daniel 1 and 2. So God is benchmarking the second clause, all our heartbreaks he bore them. Second clause in Isaiah 53:4, he's benchmarking to the deportation. Could it be more apt? Carried away to Babylon, all our heartbreaks, the deportation, and being put under, threat of siege. And of course, Josiah's bad sons are reigning at this time. Alright? And it sort of, it keeps on tracking like that from there. So let me tell you some of the things. He tracks the deportations. He's tracking beginning of Ezekiel's ministry. And then, of course, get this, the last clause in Isaiah 53:4, which I translated as God violated. And in Hebrew, it's Elohim umunet. Okay? Umunet. Violated. Afflicted is how they translate it in English Bibles. Way too tame. Okay, well, the end of that clause, Munet, is the temple being raised by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. That was on the 10th of Ab, per Jeremiah. I want to say it's Jeremiah 52. Okay, 52 verse 10, somewhere in there. Okay, the 5th month. And then he picks up, beginning in Isaiah 53:5, with the 6th month. So he rounds the syllables based on where he's picking up and where he's dropping off. And that's why I have to do more research. Okay, I mean, he's benchmarking the lycanthropy of Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 4. He's benchmarking when Nebuchadnezzar dies in the 3rd clause of Isaiah 53:5. He benchmarks when Cyrus dies at the end of Isaiah 53:6. Alright? And he begins that clause. It's 12 syllables. It's completely weird. Okay? That's that's a whole clause. You can't divide it anywhere else. Alright, so that's 12 syllables. Well, the 12 syllables start at 542 BC, which is when that son of Daniel 5, which is also reported in his 1st through 3rd years in Daniel 7 and 8, but it's Daniel 5 where it is his last night of rule. That's when the son, Nabonidus' son, goes down. Nabonidus had, gone off to retirement. He was smart. That was the siege of Cyrus. Okay, because the siege was going on for a while. Nabonidus got out of there and left his son in his place. And, Daniel 5 is the son's last night, which, according to tradition, or I don't know where they get it, it's an ISB encyclopedia, that night was supposedly the 10th of Bul, which is, they call it Cheshvan today. Okay, it's the 8th month on the Jewish sacred calendar. Alright? So God is benchmarking to that. The beginning of the period benchmarks to Daniel 5, and the end, to Daniel 7 and 8, and then goes to Daniel 5, and then ends with Cyrus dying in 530 BC at the end of the clause. That's why it's 12 syllables. So it's 542 to 530. Okay, and then Isaiah 53:7, which is about oppression, benchmarks the civil war in Persia, which ensued after Cyrus died with Cambyses, and the restoration with Darius the Great. Okay, and that's the first clause in Isaiah 53:7. The second clause in Isaiah 53:7. And these are each 7 syllables. See how apt the civil war in Persia, we determined extra biblically, was 7 years. Okay, from 530 to 522 or so. Late 523, early 522 BC. Okay, and the temple is rebuilt at 516, and it starts being rebuilt when the Civil War ends. And so he's benchmarking that with 2 7 syllables. Okay, oppressed, he violated, yet he opens not his mouth. Okay, so it's nigas wahuna'ane. That's the beginning in Hebrew of Isaiah 53:7. That's the Civil War. Get that? Is that appropriate or not? I think they translate it in English as, he was oppressed and afflicted. Yeah, Israel's oppressed and afflicted during the Civil War. That's why they couldn't keep rebuilding the temple. Yet he opens not his mouth. Yeah, he doesn't say anything, he just keeps on going. They didn't say anything, they just kept on going. That's the second clause in Isaiah 53:7. And that's when they rebuilt the temple. And it ends, the second clause in Isaiah 53:7 ends at the end of the year of what we would call 516 BC, 3 Adar. That's in Ezra 6:15. You see how cool this is? Could you ask for better vindication of who is God than this? So that's what I'm going to be working on. I'm sorry I had to make so many videos, but I knew I was going to have to take a break, and now I'm taking it. Ta-ta.